Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Opus Magnum with Lyte. Today, we're looking at the explosive Phial, in case you need to, blow some things up. We're going to start off with the small area and low cost solutions because there are a lot of quick solutions to this that are not quite optimal that I want to show you. Because this one, it's really easy. Well, I'm not going to say really easy. It's not too crazy difficult to get a nearly optimal solution in a relatively wide variety of ways that they look rather different. Now, low area, well, you use the bare minimum and voila, there you go. You get your minimum area solution. Not too bad, just do a little wiggle waggle over here on the handle of the key, push it to the nose, and you're good to go. That's really all there is to it space-wise. Use only what you're given. Okay? Cost-wise, we've got our good friend Jitter here. Now, Jitter doesn't use a piston, so it needs to use alternative measures for getting the job done. And so it just wobbles back and forth and wobbles back and forth. Still looks like a key, looks a bit more like a modern car key than an old-fashioned door key, but all in all, same sort of solution. And now, instead of a piston, we've got just an arm that wiggles and waggles a bit and gets you a nice, cheap solution. Now, as you can see here, I've got quite a few low cycle solutions, and I did manage to get down to 22, the global record. And now that we have global records, we know that 22 is what we should be aiming for. And as you can see through a lot of these 23s and 24s, I came close for quite a while, but it just didn't quite make it. So let's start off with our dancing sloth. Looks a bit like Sid from Ice Age with his weird googly eyes off to the side. And it's got two different versions of a down-the-line sort of solution. And since they are slightly different, they get to the ending at slightly different times. But given it's a staggered solution, it's likely not optimal. We've noticed that on a couple of occasions where the theoretical minimum might be lower than what we get because you get it solved at the minimum for one input, but having two of those doesn't always give you the right result because it takes you one extra cycle to put that last product in. And so from here I was like, well, what would happen if I took this one solution, which seems more compact and interesting, and then just mirrored it on the bottom? Well, that ended up costing more time because you can never just reflect things when you've got an asymmetrical product. When we've got nice symmetrical products, you can just make this bottom part on the top and it's good to go, but in this one, it's just not quite right. And so we end up losing a cycle with this also rather slothy looking solution. So we're like, okay. So what do we do from here? We've learned a few things. We've learned that salting earlier sometimes helps you clear out a couple of those cycles. So instead of going down the line and then salting and throwing it in, we try salting it first and then going down the line. And so now the bottleneck of the triple bond is done right at the end. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. That was the solution page going. And so you manage to get the salt and bond, like the regular bond, early, and then tack it on to the triple bonder at the end, which saves you quite a lot of cycles. And I was rather pleased with this solution until I got the global records. I was like, 22? That was around the time where someone in my comment section was like, yeah, you should probably try not interleaving things because you end up with that one cycle stagger. You should probably try to do it all on the same side. Well, It was slightly later, so I did another one where I'm like, oh, well, maybe we can do it. Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can pile it all on one side. You go down the line, you attach the salt at the end, you're good to go. 23. So, despite having all of this happen on one side, we still have that 23 cycle solution, and we'll get to why this one has that particular problem a little bit later, because this is the one that I used to derive the actual final 22 cycle solution, because this is a pretty good idea, because you've got the bottleneck of these guys down here, so you send the salt off to the side such that you can do everything on one side, you deal with this guy on its own. But I didn't see how to make that one work. I just didn't see it. And so I tried something completely different. Now, it's called Same Guy, so you kind of figure it has the same sorts of problems. But this one is very different from the others. And I like being able to find a solution that is just so very different from the others. Now, granted, we lost a cycle because we can't pull this one out of the way fast enough, and we've got some weird finagling that has to happen up here. But we made a side-by-side symmetrical solution that, when it does the intermediate product, it does it in different directions. And I think that's really fun. And I love big arm things. You've seen some of my earlier solutions. I love the big arms. And so we get a relatively symmetrical thing, except for this up here. I suppose I could put the arm over here, such that we've got the the matching of that over there. But it's not really worth it. And for a 24 cycle solution, I mean, it's not great, because it's really big, and it's quite expensive. And so the next thing I tried was like, okay, can I compact it down, make it cheaper, and make it at least as good as down the line, if not better? So we're like, okay, so early salting helped when trying to move forward from these. What if we took down the line and bound at the beginning instead of at the end? Well, it turns out, due to various timing issues, it doesn't help at all. You get just another 23. But once again, we bind early and pass it down the line. The problem with this solution is you just can't get down to 22 using this. And I'll show you why. Hovering over here, you're at your 21st frame of 22. So we're working backwards from having a 22 frame solution. So 22 is in the bin. 21 is hovering over it. 20 is hovering over this blue. 19 is hovering over this red. And 18 is a fully bonded thing. You've got a yellow and a bonded salt on cycle 18. Do you know what's special about cycle 18? Well, that's the cycle in which your fire, like the last one you need, comes out of the input. Now, that's true of both inputs. So somehow, using this design, you would need to have both of these eject into your final product, such that you're binding and salting here. Well, I mean, you could salt up here. You can salt wherever. But you would need a normal bond here and a triple bond over here, both happening at the same time. And that's the point where you go, okay, that's impossible, so this solution cannot be the source of the best result. You can't use a derivative of this to get the job done, because it just cannot do it. And so you go, okay. So we need to go back to something else and derive a better solution from that, because this one is just not going to do it. And why is that? Well, it's because you can't do all three of these at the same, both at the same time. The bottleneck is this triple bond here. So if you triple bond early and, say, shuttle some things forward to get bonded later, so long as you can shuttle at a comparable rate to your bonding, then you'll be able to get down to that 22. The problem with our previous down the line solution is that we sent the salt too early. And it's just waiting around for the triple bonds to show up. So the bottleneck became our salt instead of our triple bond. So what we need to do is keep this idea of sending the salt around, but instead do the salt later and have the salt race the triple bonds down to the end. And that's where we get to Boreal. Looks like a dancer of some sort, spin bot sort of thing, much like the Dance of the Boreal Valley. And so what we've got here is a big old mess. But what we need is to get from both of these over to the salt last. So we're going to start the triple bonds first. Then we need to grab one of these guys, send it towards the salt, and grab one of these guys and send it towards the salt. So this arm right here will bring it directly to the salt, and then it'll shift up to get it to this binder. Number 2 here, we'll grab this, send it over here, and then shift, shift, shift into the bin. Now this guy doesn't have enough room to move to be able to drop its salt into the bin, so we've got this little guy here to grab it and move it once it gets there. These 4 over here are in charge of getting the other results of this fire going. So the non-salt parts will need to go in and up. And then down here, we need to be able to push and push. So we've got the 4 to rotate in and 5 to push it as if it were a piston. But we know pistons are more expensive than a fixed arm on a track. At least they are now. And so grab and push. So we're starting the triple bonding. Grab and push. So we've got one that has 3 bonds, one that has 1. And then we move this guy out of the way of the next one. And then it waits. Of all things, we actually make it wait. The salt is still the bottleneck. But instead of being a several frame bottleneck, or several cycle bottleneck, it's maybe 1 or 2 cycles worth of bottleneck, as opposed to what it was before, which was fairly significant. So it really only waits there 1 frame instead of 2, I think. Either way, we've got ourselves a 22 cycle solution. But that little bit of a pause there does make me wonder if it might be possible to make it even faster, but the trouble is getting it from the input to the output. And so the one that comes here has to go 1, 2, 3. And that's really what the final tuning of the cycles comes down to. That last thing, how much does it need to do? Because previously it would come onto here. 1, 2, twist for 3, 4, 5. Possibly if we bind earlier. Yeah, if you somehow bound earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're not gonna get it earlier. Not in this configuration. You won't be able to get this other guy to be at the same rate as the first one. So the best that I've seen at all is 1, 2, 3, 4. If you somehow manage to get the last one from 4 to 3, you'll shave off 1 more and you'll be down to 21, but it's hard to even picture how that could even happen. Because you need to be able to get these guys down this line, but also be able to get them across. And the only way... Yeah, even then, the one prior to it just goes straight onto the salt, bind, and in. So unless you get a second output, I don't think you're going to do better than 22. And even getting to 22 on this one is complicated and weird. There were several designs that I attempted that I didn't even end up saving because they just did not work. Like one, I tried to do a buffer system where I had it going around one side so that I could focus on the other, and anytime you buffer one, you can't buffer the other, and you can't get the other one to be any faster. But this one was a lot of trial and error, just seeing how do you get them, because I originally tried to get the salt on this side, over on the right, and I just ran out of real estate. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll move it to the left. Can I get them across? And then getting them across and then up and through, whew, a lot went into this one, but I am pleased with the result. And now that we have global records, we know it's pretty darn good. That's all I've got here for the explosive Phial. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you've got a fun, interesting, weird, or fantastic solution, feel free to share it in the comment section on Twitter or on Discord. But I will see you in the next episode of Opus Magnum with Lyte.